We are counting down to when Nigerians will elect their representatives. It's exactly 29 days to the Presidential National Assembly elections, 43 days to the governorship and state assembly elections, and just 3 more days before the deadline for the collection of PVCs after INEC extended the exercise by 1 week. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Okuntoye. Well, different political parties have continued to push their messages to the very people they are hoping will vote for them. At least 93 million voters are up for this election, and 2 things may work against voter turnout this time: the state of insecurity and voter apathy. The question is, what is the state of mind of many Nigerians today? The mood on the streets suggests that Nigerians are contending with a number of issues that may be the deciding factor on election day. The endless petrol queues have continued and have returned, with many making a killing by hiking the cost per litre. Roads leading up to filling stations are blocked as traffic tailback for as far as the eye can see. Well, there's the issue of the Naira, which is yet to regain its value, and the inability to purchase forex, which is putting pressure on imports, businesses, and private individuals. The cashless policy has inflicted more harm than good to the man on the street, who argues that financial inclusion has not filtrated down to the grassroots, just as the infrastructure to enhance the principles of the policy have proved to be somewhat ineffective. As we speak, some banks are still dispensing old notes, even as the Apex Bank maintains that the date for this new policy to come into effect is sacrosanct. Let's begin with this report from Kwara that looks at the issues and the mindset of Nigerians 29 days before election day.
Many bank customers beseech banks in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, to withdraw money either at the ATM points or inside the banking hall.
There have been complaints by many Nigerians about the inadequacy of the new Naira notes at the ATM points and banking halls. And this explains why officials of the Central Bank of Nigeria are going around some commercial banks in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, to monitor the situation reports.
Officials of the Ilorin branch of the Central Bank of Nigeria are here to feel the pulse of the people, and they do not hide their feelings.
Nigeria currently, I don't think cashless policy will fit Nigeria. I urge the government to help us to extend the deadline, because this at first I don't think it's very possible for Nigerians to meet up the deadline.
But the CBN insists that the deadline would not be extended, asking Nigerians to take advantage of the remaining days to do the needful.
We encourage people to make sure that right from now, from this moment, they should take all their money or whatever they have to their banks for deposit. They shouldn't wait till the end of the day, the 31st of January. They should make sure that from now, they should take their money, because there's not going to be any extension.
Apart from exchanging notes in the banks, the Apex Bank says it has also made available cash swap to allow those in the rural communities swap their old currencies for new ones.
That is cash swap, to enable people with something like 10,000 to exchange their money. That is another policy that came out for those that doesn't have an account and they have little money with them, especially the people in the rural areas, so that they can exchange this money.
As at 11 in the morning, the money in these banks' automated teller machines had finished.
This is the money that they gave us, new note. But the problem now is that I don't think the bank is having much to dispense out, and the poor masses will suffer for it. You can see many people here, they wanted to, but they are not dispensing. If the central bank said they have given much money, let them enforce it on them to bring money out.
The newly redesigned Naira notes were introduced by the CBN to control the amount of money in circulation, check counterfeiting, lower inflation rates, and discourage ransom payments.
Well, while lawmakers are insisting that the CBN should postpone this policy by 6 months, the Apex Bank is saying that the January 31st date for deadline is sacrosanct. The mood on the streets may be one of frustration and anger, but what will this mean so close to polling day? We also spoke to a cross-section of Nigerians about what they feel as regards the lingering fuel scarcity.
A country that has crude oil in excess, and we are now suffering for the fuel. It's a pity.
yesterday we are I bought 340 yesterday. And then we are using the fuel to carry the passenger. Our passenger are complaining.
Be queuing for about 2 hours to buy fuel now. 2 hours to buy a fuel. On a normal day, we should just enter the filling station and get your fuel.
It's too much. We have been here since morning, and they are not attending to us. It's only those people that they know that they drive their car in. So we are suffering, and they are not looking at us.
I slept here like twice. I came here, I thought that I even came early, not knowing that the queue will still have to form an L to this place.
Just like Henry, other motorists share their bitter stories.
I've not been sleeping. I slept around 12 and I woke up 4 o'clock just to meet up. And meeting up, I got to look at where the queue is.
Joining us now to discuss the many issues facing Nigerians as they decide who their elected representatives will be is public affairs analyst Femi Lawson. Mr. Lawson, thank you for joining us on the program. So look at the issues. There's first scarcity, there is inflation, there is a cashless policy that is due in a few days. Do you consider this development strange in a pre-election month?
It's not strange, but it's a development that has called for serious concern, and I think every Nigerian must be concerned that for months now, what we thought was going to be the normal, fuel scarcity that we've experienced in the country, which sometimes lasts for days or weeks, have extended into months now. And unfortunately, it is extending to a very crucial moment in the nation's history, because in less than 30 days, Nigerians are going to be going to the poll to elect new leaders. And this is a very strategic national responsibility for us as Nigerians. And what ordinarily should make it easier for Nigerians to participate in this very crucial process is becoming a thing that is becoming an impediment. What is happening now has not only become a major economic issue for the average Nigerian, it is also having its impact on our political development as a nation. And that is why, if you look at the situation on the street today, it's already impeding preparations for the elections. When you look at the fact that a lot of people can no longer go and spend time trying to get the permanent voters card. A lot of people cannot even embark on political campaigns as it should, especially the candidate for lower positions.
There's also the position, Mr. Lawson, as to how this would also perhaps be issues ahead of the election and want to make some people decide to go and vote.
Well, it's going to be a major issue. It's going to be part of those factors, that may determine how Nigerians will vote, because remember that as we speak, a particular political party is in the saddle, and it is expected that government should be responsible in circumstances like this, especially when you look at the fuel situation, you look at the issue of the currency swap, that is also becoming a major issue of concern, not only even to politicians or the people who are in the private sector, but even the ordinary Nigerians on the street. So these are issues that may form the referendum for our Nigerians to decide the next set of leaders that will be elected. And that is why, this current development may play critical roles in whatever the outcome.
Already, lawmakers have called on the NNPC Limited to do something as the single importer of the commodity, and we'll see how it goes, especially as we count down to the election. Public affairs analyst Femi Lawson, thank you for talking to us.
It's my pleasure.
And when we return after this break, 93 million registered voters, 176,846 polling units, and 18 registered political parties in the forthcoming election. But what should Nigerians be doing on election day? Stay with us. You're watching The Countdown. Let's talk about the eligibility of voters ahead of this election. Of course, you know that you must be a Nigerian citizen to vote. You must also be 18 years and above. Your name? must be on the voter register. It means that you must have registered to vote. You're aware that there are 94.3 million. We added 9.5 million new voters for the 2023 election. You must also possess what they call a permanent voter's card. Voters who do not have their PVCs will not be accredited, and there's no way they'll be able to vote. There are also some restrictions on election day in case you are voting for the first time. Campaigning for votes or persuading a voter not to vote for a candidate is not allowed on election day. That's why campaigns get stopped some 24 hours before the D-Day. You cannot shout slogans concerning the election or in support of any party. You can also not be in possession of an offensive weapon or wear any apparel calculated to intimidate voters. Using a vehicle bearing the color or symbol of a political party or candidate is also not allowed. You also cannot loiter without lawful excuse after voting or after being refused to vote. Of course, this is obvious. Snatching or destroying any election material is not allowed. The use of sirens, yes, that's very critical. It's expected to be very quiet on election day. Let's talk to correspondent Habida Lawal, who joins us live from Abuja to walk us through what election day is like for voters. Hi, Abidat. You have covered a number of elections in the past. For the privilege of millions of first-time voters in this year's election, walk us through the typical election day for voters.
Well, Nifemi, election day is usually a busy one for all those concerned, journalists, security personnel, and INEC ad hoc staff. You start as early as dawn. They try to move materials to different polling units, and you have journalists also checking how the process is going, and also security officials trying to ensure the process is seamless. And when accreditation and verification of the permanent voters card starts by 8 a.m. in the morning usually, except cases where you have late arrival of election materials. After that is done, you have people that have already been accredited queuing up properly to proceed to vote at a stipulated time. The Independent National Electoral Commission has always tried to maintain a stipulated time for these processes so that voting will commence swiftly, thereafter counting, and the difference between previous elections and this year election is the introduction of the bimodal voters accreditation system, which has the function, a two function, that is facial recognition and also the finger print accreditation as well. And after that is done, it also has the ability to upload result electronically to the INEC portal for all to see.
Indeed. So we're looking forward to quite a number of differences, particularly for those who voted when the last time they voted was 2019. What are those key differences in this election from the previous ones?
Well, we've had an increase, a significant increase in the number of newly registered voters, especially the youth, and many others have also tried, people that have abandoned their PVCs have tried to locate where they can pick up their PVCs and ensure that they participate in this election. We also have a situation whereby the Independent National Electoral Commission is trying to meet with critical stakeholders, the security most especially, to ensure that the election is violence-free in the face of insecurity in some parts of the country.
Abdullah live for us in Abuja. Now let's talk about security concerns ahead of this election. The recent attack on INEC offices have become a cause of worry. Killings in different parts of the country have continued to generate reactions on how prepared security agencies are. I'm joined now by the CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited, a security expert, Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, thank you for joining us on the program. The elections are due in less than a month. How prepared would you say that security operatives are amidst growing security concerns?
And yes, so as you're aware, there is the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, which is an ad hoc committee that was founded by INEC to provide election security issues. That committee has about 20 plus or thereabout security organizations. So when you ask how prepared are the security organizations, I would say quite prepared. I know that as early as middle of last year, the several units within the military started preparing their personnel. So in the case of the Army, the Chief of Army Staff did engage with his personnel, launched a handbook on that would be guidance for them. But then the lead agency in election security management, which is the police, has also done a lot in terms of its preparation.
Talking about the police, Dr. Adamo, we hear that the Police Service Commission has now asked police officers due for retirement to exit the service. They are saying that all existing laws constrain the commission from elongating their tenure, particularly those of the retiring senior police officers. What do you make of the concerns about the implication of this on the number of policemen available for this election?
Well, the truth of it is, whether with this group that will be retiring or without them, there is a challenge of numbers. I was about to tell you that we're looking at about 176,000 polling units that INEC would have to administer elections at. We're also looking at about 1.5 million both ad hoc and permanent staff of INEC that will be moving around these 176,000 units. And so to imagine that about less than 1 million security personnel will be able to provide adequate security for both this logistic nightmare that I've mentioned, as well as these locations, it's not realistic. And so the retirement of a sizable number of the senior management of this lead agency, I think it's not, the timing is unfortunately not well. But it is what it is. These persons have to go by the service regulations with which they signed. And our succession planning should be better to ensure that we know when they are going and we know that there are persons who can take over from them. So I'm not the type to sit and justify an elongation of a tenure on the basis of functions. No, we should do better succession planning so that those persons have people who will take over from them.
By the way, the police is talking about the recruitment of 10,000 new officers and the annual recruitment of thousands of officers as well. We're looking forward to the impact this will have for the election. But let's talk about the rules guiding security operatives during this election, the bearing of arms, for instance. You talked about interagency collaboration earlier, but at what point do we bring in policemen bearing arms? At what point are they invited into the electoral process?
So the Electoral Act provides for 3 cordons of security. You can call it concentric cycles of security. The inner cordon, where the polling unit is, there is not going to be an armed security personnel. It will be unarmed security personnel. Now, there's an outer, or rather inner perimeter. In that inner perimeter, which is away from the polling unit, there will be armed security personnel, both static and others that would be involved in patrols. And then there will be an outer perimeter, which would involve military personnel and other armed security personnel. So the idea is that these 2 or 3 cordons would provide adequate security for the polling units in their geographical space. Anyone coming into any of those cordons would have been checked, and he or she would not be able to perpetrate any security challenge. However, the reality, unfortunately, is we've seen in previous elections where these gaps are exploited and you see people stealing polling units and perpetrating violence, as it were. So the major thing that I've not heard, and I'm hoping to hear from ICSES, this committee in INEC, is how would they enhance communication between this inner, outer perimeter, so that if there is a threat at the polling unit, the unarmed security personnel in the polling
the response time as well.
So communication and response time are the most important things on the day of the election.
So there have been calls to withdraw some security men, particularly those who are attached to VIPs, so that we will have enough hands for this election. How do you think the police should respond to that?
We've had that severally, and in fact, I can't remember, at least in my adult life, any Inspector General of Police that did not issue a circular to that effect. What has been missing is the implementation, and I'm not going to keep myself to say that it would happen. It's not going to happen. I think the reality is that unfortunately they would retain these persons. And remember that the security environment has deteriorated. And so the elites, and organizations like your organization and several others would not want to relinquish the security personnel that are deployed to protect them, including the VIP protection that they are doing. So we need to dig inwards, and by digging inwards, earlier on I spoke about the role of ICSES. I think ICSES need to sit down as a committee and come out with an election security management plan that would recognize these 176,000 polling units, recognize the 1.5 million ad hoc staff and several other components of the electoral process, and say, okay, this is how we intend to provide security. It mustn't be deployed security, it can be layered security. I am an advocate of the layered approach to security, not just one layer, at least 3 or 4 layers.
Sounds pretty much like a long-term approach to this current challenge.
Really. Not really, Coyote. If I were given that responsibility, is to task the the 2 chairpersons of the committee within a week to produce that plan, and then come up with a clear deployment, order for all the personnel of the various organizations that will be involved.
We have to go now, Dr. Adabo. Very quickly, I'd like you to speak to, you talked about the Electoral Act earlier. What happens on election day? What really constitutes a breach for the electorate? We've been hearing about the use of phone and all of the rules that engage voters, particularly in the fight against vote buying.
Okay, so that's slightly outside my purview. My purview is really security management. All I know as an example is that I can tell you a security personnel cannot be at a polling unit. The use of phones by security personnel, as an example, like they did in previous elections to take pictures of the ballot papers of voters, all of those are acts that are disallowed under the current Electoral Act. But in terms of the voting process itself, that's slightly outside my purview.
Kabir Adabo, security expert, CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited. Thank you for talking to us in the program.
Thank you for having me.
And just before we wrap up our episode of The Countdown today, a quick reminder about the deadline to register. There are just 3 more days left. INEC earlier on postponed or extended the collection deadline by a week. Without your PVC, your rights to vote is denied. So go get it. And sure you get it by all means. Thanks for staying tuned. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again tomorrow.